And for us, it's all about slowing the spread. And at times it really feels like you just have your fingers in the dike. You know, it's really about making people aware that the more they move infested wood, the greater chance we have of spreading the insect. And we need to limit the movement of wood as much as possible to give researchers time to see if there's a way to counteract EAB. Again, we have a number of first detectors who are out there helping us. You may have noticed purple traps, these triangular traps that are hanging in trees. Each of the 5 communities has, in the islands, has 4 traps deployed. Those went out in early June. They'll be checked in mid-July, and again in October when we take them down. And what we do is these traps have sticky substance on them, and there's also a lure inside the trap that's attractive to EAB. And we lower the traps in mid-July and pick off those insects that look like EAB and send them off to the state lab for identification. This is how the infestation in Alberg was discovered last year. There were a couple of adult EAB were located in a trap up in Alberg. We haven't gotten this far yet, but we will probably be doing some sort of county-wide preparedness planning. And we also will be participating in EAB Awareness Week. It's September 12th through the 19th. Just mentioned very briefly there, we talked about insecticide treatments that can be that's a systemic insecticide that can be injected into the tree, which will provide the tree anywhere from 2 to 3 years worth of protection. One of our task force members, Al Christ, up in Grand Isle, sent out a survey to certified pesticide applicators and folks who do tree service work and arborists, asking if they would be willing to offer their services in Grand Isle County. And this is the list of respondents to that survey. It's by no means inclusive, and we're not endorsing these people, but these folks are certified pesticide applicators, and you need to be licensed as such in order to apply this particular insecticide. And these folks have expressed a willingness to treat ash in the county. There's a wide range of price, anywhere from about $7 to $12 or more per diameter inch of tree. This list is available from each of your town's tree warden or your town clerk, or you can email me and I'll send it to you as well. So just to wrap this up with some takeaways, good resource is this vtinvasives.org website. Also the VT Community Forestry website. And we're really on the cusp here in Grand Isle of losing a lot of our landscape, our forested landscape to EAB. So the more we can do to slow the spread, the better it's going to be long term. And I can't emphasize that enough, not to move firewood. And again, we're trying to promote safety as people start dealing with these infested trees. We're very concerned that unless you've had specific training, just the EAB infested trees are a risky business to try and take down. Good website. And we want to keep Grand Isle County, and not only the town of Grand Isle County, but the county of Grand Isle as the beauty spot of Vermont. And the more we can do to slow the spread of slow the spread of EAB by limiting the movement of firewood, the better off we'll be. And that's all I had. And thank you very much for allowing me a few minutes of your time.
Awesome, Bill. Well, yeah, thank you so much. If you want to just go ahead and unshare your screen there. And so in a couple minutes here, we'll have Nancy Patch start. I don't think I got any questions in the chat bar. Does anyone have any questions for Bill? We will have a chance for questions later, but if you have any questions now, feel free to put it in the chat. Or we also have, this, a small enough group, so if you do want to just like unmute yourself and ask a question, we can also do it that way too. But if you want to send in the chat, that's probably the easiest. If folks don't have questions, we can move forward. But I'll give everyone a good 30 seconds or so if you want to type in any questions. While people are putting in some questions, I forgot to do this earlier actually, but we were going to create a poll to see kind of where people are calling in from. This was originally created as a Grand Isle County project, but we also advertised it throughout the state. So we put together a little poll just kind of asking what county you all are from. So I'm going to launch this poll right now. So you should be seeing it. And if you don't mind just putting in what county you are zooming in from today. And then if you don't see your county, you can also put it in the chat bar. They only give us like 10 options, and then of course there's 14 counties, so wasn't able to put them all in there. So you feel free to put it in the chat bar what county you're from if it's not on the list. I have a question from Alyssa. Is it strongly suggested that we have ash trees treated proactively if they are not yet showing the signs of EAB destruction? Bill or any of the speakers, do you guys want to address the question from Alyssa?
Yes. So given that the insect typically starts or infests the tree towards the top, by the time you start noticing the telltale symptoms, you have significant problems with that tree. So if you have an ash tree in your yard that you want to protect, and you live in Grand Isle County, now is the time for treatment. And I know there are a number of residents, especially in the South Hero area, who have already taken that step. So I would recommend treating now.
Awesome, thank you, Bill. Do any of the other speakers have any other comments to add to that? Okay, someone asked if the slideshows are going to be available online. We are going to post this video. We're actually recording this right now, and we are going to post that on the South Hero Land Trust YouTube page. And I'll send everyone who signed up for this event the link for that in case you want to re-watch it or to send it out to other folks. But the slides are a good point. We did not talk about that, so maybe I'll chat. We can chat later about also putting the slideshows available online too. So we will figure that out. Looking through other questions here. So from Colleen, what does it cost to treat one tree?
So the price range, depending on who you would hire, has ranged from about $7.50 to upwards of $12 or more per diameter inch. So if you had a 10-inch diameter tree, it might cost you $75 to $120 or more dollars. And typically the applicators are offering 2-year protection, and sometimes they'll suggest that you'll have protection for 3 years. You have to kind of weigh that against, and that might sound expensive, but if you have a high value tree in your yard that is adding a lot of value to your home, providing you shade and actually enhancing the value of your real estate, it might be worth the effort. Plus, knowing that EAB will eventually kill the tree, you are faced then with takedown costs, which can be very significant for a large ash tree.
Any other speakers want to jump in there? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next question from Carol. How do I get the list of businesses treating EAB?
So you can email me at the wab448@gmail.com, and I can send you that list. Your town clerk should have it as well, and your local tree warden. But I can certainly email that list to you if you'd like.
Okay, from Jane, what's the long-term benefit of injecting trees every 2 years?
Well, the insecticide is going to kill the larva. There's been some talk that it may even kill the adult if the adult's feeding on the leaves, but I wouldn't quote me on that. I'd really want to do some more research on that. But the benefit is you have a systemic insecticide in the tree that is going to kill the larva before the larva can do damage to the tree. And if you don't do this, and EAB continues to spread, you'll eventually lose your tree unless you happen to be one of the lucky ones that has some sort of lingering ash. But on the spectrum of host ash trees, black ash and green ash are favored by the insect over white ash, which we don't have much of in the county. So black ash and green ash are really the preferred ash trees that the EAB likes to infest and feed on.
For folks asking, I just put Bill's email in the chat bar. So if you want to get in touch with Bill about local services or you want to get involved with the Emerald Ash Borer Task Force, that is Bill's email there in the chat bar. We have time for probably one more question, and then we'll move on to Nancy. And I will save the questions, though, so we can make sure we get to them. The next question is from Edward. Since it appears inevitable that trees will die, it appears that the time to start cutting down trees is now. What help can a landowner look forward to? Grants, tree cutting classes, etc.
I think if you're talking a forested landscape, that's really Nancy's area of expertise and for forest management. And if you're talking more of like a tree in your yard, an individual tree, I would, unless you're a trained arborist, I would recommend hiring a tree service to take a tree down, especially if there's any sort of suspicion that it's already infested with EAB, because they are dangerous trees to deal with.
Awesome. Okay, so we have a few more questions in the queue, but we're going to go ahead and move forward here. I think we're having some technical difficulties with Nancy, but we'll see if we can get you live. Nancy, are you able to share your screen with us?
Can you see this?
We can hear you, Nancy, and it does
Can
say
you hear me?
we can hear you, and it says Nancy has started screen sharing, but I personally am not seeing the slide come up yet.
Yeah, I don't see the slides either.
Okay. So if anybody can see my slides, is that possible? If it doesn't work, I think we're going to pass it on to Ginger to take over. What's going on the screens?
It just has a black screen that says Nancy P has started screen sharing. Maybe try to unshare and then share again, maybe.
Her photo's not on her picture's not up on the screen. Does she have the
Yeah, no,
audio,
my
video?
photo's not
turned
on purpose.
But maybe the only one showing it had it on, and maybe if you turn on your video, it'll show it.
Okay, I can try that. Okay. So do you see the screen?
No, same thing. Looks like Nancy P has started screen sharing, but we just see a black
Try
screen.
sharing it again.
I'm so sorry. This has never happened. I've done lots of webinars and Zoom meetings before. And I don't know, I've got kicked out about 10 times. So maybe Ginger, if you can share your screen and start with the forest land slide, you might have to take over.
Nancy, one thing that someone mentioned was maybe we could share your presentation afterwards. So if you don't mind sharing your slides afterwards, that way we can get those out to folks.
Sure, I didn't even hear what you said completely.
Oh, no worries. Just that if we can't see your slideshow today, maybe if you'd be available to post the slideshow when we send out the info after this, so folks could still see that.
Yeah, oops. Sorry, this went to the beginning from current slide. Okay, can people see this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Nancy, can you see it? No, I guess not. She's not available. Okay, well, hi everybody. I'm Ginger Nickerson. As Guy said earlier, I work for the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program, which is a partnership between Vermont's Department of Forest Parks and Recreation and UVM Extension. I'm on the extension side, and I am going to be showing the slides that Nancy was supposed to be talking about, which is all around if you own forested land yourself, what are some of the questions that you might have in terms of how can you be managing that land in preparation for emerald ash borer. And normally I do this presentation in partnership with whoever the county forester is, and they take this part. So we'll be learning together here. So, you know, the question that a lot of folks have is, well, I have a lot of ash in my forest land, so what should I be doing? Should I be cutting my ash trees now? And the answer is really sort of, you know, it depends on what your goals are for your land. And Nancy, can you hear me? I can't, it doesn't look like she can hear me. I was going to invite her to jump in at any point if she could. But what we know is that once the infestation starts, as Bill mentioned, you have a period of 3 to 5 years between when your ash will start to die. And so this really is the time to start thinking about what do you want to do with your ash if you have it on your property, and to develop a plan. So you want to be, just as Bill talked about, conducting inventories on municipal right-of-ways. As a property owner, you want to inventory where the trees are on your property, how many ash do you have, where are they, how big are they, and there are, if your property is in current use, you can review your property with your current, whoever your forester is for your current use plan. And otherwise, I'm assuming that Nancy, as your county forester, would also be available. So you have a variety of different options, and those are going to depend on what your goals are for your property. You can do something which includes, monitoring the ash. If any of the trees are going to have the potential to fall either on your property or somebody else's property, or if you have trails where the trees could become hazards and fall on people who are using those trails, those are trees that you will want to remove because of the liability that they present. But you also might want to harvest trees for either firewood or for the income that they represent for you. And that's something else that a forester can help you determine which trees to take out if you're interested in taking them out for income. When you do take out if you are harvesting trees, something that you're going to want to be thinking about are the gaps that are created and how you might be controlling any invasive plants that might come in after those gaps are created. If you're not interested in getting income out of the ash or using them for firewood, it's perfectly fine to leave any trees that are not going to be hazardous. If they don't present a risk either to your or to somebody else's property or wouldn't fall and hurt people who are using trails, it's absolutely fine to leave those ash. And there's a lot of reasons why you might want to do that. The ash trees are incredibly important, sort of foundational species in the northeastern ecosystem, and they provide a lot of home to wildlife, both the insects that Bill mentioned and to birds. As they die, they contribute a lot of woody debris to the soil. So it's absolutely fine. There's no problem in doing nothing and just letting those trees die as the wave of the EAB infestation comes through. But if you're interested in harvesting it for wood, you want to be careful to do that before those trees become a hazard. Because as Bill mentioned, once they do start to die from the top out down, they do become very brittle, and then felling those trees becomes very dangerous. And also once the tree is dead and they can start to rot, then the wood isn't going to be of use to you. So, whoops, I advanced too far. So one of the things that we dealt with early on was people were very concerned that, the state was encouraging people to cut down all of their ash trees. And that's not at all what our intent is. We really understand that ash is a very important part of our ecosystems. And so our motto is sort of don't be rash with your ash. If you don't need to cut it, then there's no reason to cut it. So we want to encourage people to maintain ash as a component of the landscape in order to promote the diversity of native species. And we're also interested in keeping ash as a component of the ecosystem because we recognize that it's a very important part of, that it has a lot of economic value. So it's not just important ecologically, but the wood has important economic value for folks. And so that's one of the other reasons why we're trying to keep the trees in the landscape. And so, as I'm going to be discussing later on, this concept of the lingering ash, there is that very small percentage that has some ash resistance, and so that some resistance to the borer. And so if you leave your trees on the landscape, that will help us identify which trees have the resistance, and then those can become sort of the genetic forebears of being able to what we're hoping to be able to repopulate the landscape with ash in the future. I think this is the last one on the forest management. If your land is in current use, stick to your plan, talk to your forester, and amend your plan as necessary. Timing does matter, but I think given that the islands are within that kind of what we call the fried egg zone, that they are already considered infested, that this is the time to start developing your harvesting plan. And when it talks about slow the spread practices, those are guidelines and recommendations that the state has for the harvesting and processing of wood. And so depending on what you're using the wood for, there are different recommendations about how you should be doing that in ways that will slow the spread of emerald ash borer. And I'll be going over the slow the spread recommendations later. But to not during flight season, and so flight season starts at the beginning of June 1st, and it goes until the end of September. So you would be doing your harvesting from October 1st to the end of May, because you don't want to be dispersing the adults any more than necessary. And you should not move wood that has not been treated outside of the infested area if you're going to be taking it to a processor or a purchaser outside of the islands.